The fateful encounter. When humanity knocked on the galactic door, you invaded Earth? Are you completely out of your multi-dimensional mind? The question bounced around the circular chamber, ricocheting off the polished obsidian walls like a hyperactive rubber ball. Ambassador Zextrel of the Venurian hegemony adjusted his breathing apparatus and fluttered his sensory appendages in what passed for amusement among his kind. I failed to see the issue, first speaker. They're a pre-TTL civilization on a backwater world orbiting an unremarkable G-type star. The invasion protocols were followed to the letter. The first speaker of the Galactic Council, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate hovering matrix, pulsed an angry crimson. Did you even read the classification file on humans? Well, no, but personally, Zextrel admitted, his confidence wavering slightly. My military advisors assure me it was a standard operation. A show of force, minimal casualties, resource acquisition, symbolic submission, the usual. Why are you making such a fuss? The chamber erupted into a cacophony of alarmed vocalizations, tentacle waving, and atmospheric disturbances that indicated profound dismay among the assembled representatives of the galaxy's 73 most advanced civilizations. Silence. The first speaker's matrix flared so brightly that several delegates had to adjust their optical filters. Ambassador Zextrel, you have potentially endangered every spacefaring species in the sector with your recklessness. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a slowly rotating blue-green planet Earth. Earth, the first speaker continued, is classified as prohibited territory under Galactic Statute 7293B, subsection O. Dear God, no. I don't understand. Zextrel stammered, his previously puffed-up thorax now deflating rapidly. They're just primitive bipeds. They haven't even colonized their own moon yet. From across the chamber, a gravelly voice, like stones being ground together, spoke up. Tell that to the Mexori, rumbled Counselor Grizz of the Silicon Confederation. They thought the same thing 2 centuries ago. The who? Zextrel's translator struggled with his hissed confusion. The who nobody remembers, Grizz grumbled. Because there aren't any left to remember. An uncomfortable silence settled over the council chamber, broken only by the soft whirring of environmental systems and the occasional nervous rustle of appendages. Perhaps, offered a melodious voice from the shadows, our esteemed colleague from the Venurian hegemony should see the video. Murmurs of agreement and several gasps of horror circulated through the chamber. Is that really necessary, Ambassador Lyria? The first speaker asked, his energy patterns shifting to a concerning violet. The speaker emerged from the shadows, a tall, graceful being, with iridescent skin and eyes like liquid mercury. Ambassador Lyria of the Ethetheran Conclave was over 900 standard years old, and had seen enough of the universe's horrors to know when a sobering reality check was needed. I believe it is, first speaker. If the Venurians are to understand the magnitude of their error, they must see what we're dealing with. The first speaker's matrix pulsed in resignation. Very well. Cue historical record, Earth. A history lesson from Earthtal. Elegant aliens with 6 limbs and elongated craniums worked at various stations. Their movements were precise, confident, the demeanor of a species that had conquered hundreds of worlds without meaningful resistance. A command figure stood in the center, issuing orders in a language long dead, but translated by the Council's systems. Planetary defenses, minimal. Primitive projectile weapons and early-stage nuclear capabilities. No orbital platforms, no detection grid. Recommendation, standard pacification protocol. The scene shifted to external footage. Massive ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, breaking through cloud cover to reveal sprawling cities below. Deployment zones selected. Population centers targeted for maximum psychological impact. Commencing shock and awe protocol. Energy weapons fired from the ships, striking various monuments and military installations, a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority designed to force immediate surrender. But then, something unexpected happened. Rather than panicking or submitting, the humans organized with astonishing speed. The footage became chaotic. Mexilori ground forces reporting unexpected resistance, not just from military units, but from civilians. Elderly humans throwing improvised explosives, children acting as spotters and messengers, domestic animals being deployed as detection systems and even attack units. A Mexilori commander's voice grew increasingly frantic. They're using their entertainment media as training simulations. They've been rehearsing this scenario for centuries. They already know all our tactics. The footage jumped between scenes of escalating disaster for the invaders. A group of Mexilori soldiers cornered by what appeared to be office workers wielding furniture and kitchen implements. A Mexilori ship grounded by something as simple as a reflective material, confusing its sensors. Humans in various uniforms working alongside humans in no uniforms at all, communicating with hand signals, repurposing the invaders' own technology against them with implausible speed. The final segment showed the Mexilori command ship. Alarms blaring, systems failing. How are they in our network? How? They can't even have conceived of our programming language. A human voice responded over the ship's own communication system, speaking perfect Mexilori. We watch a lot of sci-fi, buddy. Now, out those engine core self-destruct codes. The transmission ended with a blinding flash. The chamber remained silent as the hologram faded. Zextrel's breathing apparatus worked overtime. That can't be real. It must be propaganda. Ambassador Lyria's mercury eyes reflected the ambient light of the chamber. If only that were true, Ambassador. Unfortunately, what you just witnessed is merely the beginning of what happens when someone makes the mistake of invading Earth. The Mexilori were a type to civilization, Counselor Grizz added. They had conquered 73 worlds across 12 star systems. Nothing remained of them within 6 standard months of their Earth invasion. Nothing. But how? Zextrel's voice had risen to a pitch his translator struggled to modulate. The first speaker's matrix shifted to a didactic blue. Allow me to explain the unique properties of humans, Ambassador. They are individually rather unimpressive specimens. Limited sensory capacity, no natural defenses, physically weak compared to many sentient species. Then I'm not finished, interrupted the first speaker. What makes humans unique and terrifying is their psychological makeup, social structures, and evolutionary history. A new hologram appeared, showing various scenes of human history. Humans evolved as persistent predators on a death world of exceptional environmental diversity. Their planet contains ecosystems ranging from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts, from oxygen-deprived mountains to crushing oceanic depths, and humans have found a way to survive in all of them. The hologram shifted to show humans in various environments, climbing impossibly steep mountains, diving into oceanic trenches, traversing burning deserts, establishing bases in Antarctica. They are the only known species that recreationally goes to dangerous places that might kill them, for fun. Scenes of humans engaging in activities labeled as extreme sports, exploration, and adventure tourism played across the hologram. But that's not the worst of it, continued the first speaker. The comprehensive aspect of humanity is this. They are simultaneously the most cooperative and the most conflict-prone species we've ever encountered. The hologram displayed scenes of human warfare through the ages, juxtaposed with examples of massive cooperative endeavors. They can form social bonds with literally anything, Ambassador Lyria added. They create emotional attachments to members of other species, inanimate objects, and even conceptual constructs. Yet, they've also spent most of their history fighting each other, which means they've been honing their combat tactics against the only worthy opponents they know, themselves. Counselor Grizz grumbled ominously, and when faced with an external threat, their internal conflicts are immediately set aside in favor of the greater human collective. It's also unnatural, added a previously silent delegate from the methane-breathing Jovoid collective. They have this peculiar psychological response to attempted domination. They call it. The delegate consulted a datapad. Spite. They will accept tremendous personal harm if it means thwarting the will of an entity trying to control them. Most rational species submit to superior force as a survival mechanism. Humans view submission as worse than death. Zextrel's appendages trembled. Surely our technology. The first speaker cut in. The technological gap between the Mexilori and humans was greater than the gap between your civilization and theirs. Didn't help them, did it? Humans don't approach problems from a position of technological parity. They specialize in asymmetric responses. But my invasion force has been deployed. Yes, said the first speaker grimly. And how long ago did they establish contact with Earth? Zextrel checked his chronometer. Approximately 3 local Earth rotations. A collective gasp swept through the chamber. 3 days? Ambassador Lyria's mercury eye sharpened. You might already be too late. What do you mean, too late? Zextrel demanded, panic evident even through his translator. The first speaker's matrix darkened. Tell me, Ambassador, have you received any communications from your fleet since they established contact? Well, no. But that's standard procedure during initial. It's not standard procedure. It's a very bad sign, the first speaker interrupted. We should check Earth's current status immediately. Activate long-range monitoring. The central hologram shifted again, now showing a real-time view of Earth from a hidden Council observation platform in the outer solar system. What they saw caused several delegates to emit involuntary distress signals. Earth was unchanged, still blue, and green, and beautiful. But in orbit around it floated the unmistakable shapes of Venurian warships. Or rather, what remained of them. Some were clearly disabled, drifting lifelessly. These showed signs of having been scientifically disassembled. A few appeared to have been repurposed, their distinctive propulsion systems, now fitted to crude, but apparently functional human-made structures. That's impossible, whispered Zextrel. It's only been 3 rotations. And look there, said Counselor Grizz, pointing a silicon appendage at the hologram. The view zoomed in on what appeared to be a crude space station cobbled together from parts of Venurian ships and what must have been pre-existing human orbital platforms. Around it swarmed small craft, some clear Venurian shuttles, others entirely of human design that hadn't existed 3 days earlier. They're reverse engineering our technology, Zextrel said in disbelief. No, corrected the first speaker, they're improving it. But our encryption or security protocols. They meant nothing, interrupted Ambassador Lyria. Humans have a saying that perfectly encapsulates their approach to technological barriers. Hold my beer. It's simultaneously a pledge to attempt the impossible and a social bonding ritual involving recreational neurotoxins. Can we establish communication with Earth? Asked the first speaker. The chamber's AI responded. Earth is broadcasting on all frequencies, first speaker. They are using Venurian communication protocols. On screen, ordered the first speaker. The hologram shifted again. Now, it showed a human and unremarkable specimen with pale skin and dark facial hair, wearing what appeared to be a hastily modified Venurian environmental suit adjusted for human physiology. Attention, alien vessel, said the human, in perfectly modulated galactic standard. This is Captain Thomas Flynn of Earth Unified Defense. We've been expecting your call. The chamber fell silent again. Captain Flynn, the first speaker began cautiously. I am the first speaker of the Galactic Council. May I ask how you learned our language so quickly? The human's face displayed the facial expression categorized in xenobiological records as a smirk. Let's just say your friends, the Venurians, were very informative. Amazing what people will tell you when you ask them nicely. Or not so nicely. The human gestured, and the view broadened to show a Venurian officer standing beside him, looking distinctly worse for wear, but very much alive. This is Commander Vexler. He's been helping us understand our place in the galactic community, including the fact that we're apparently on some kind of do not disturb list, which someone clearly ignored. Ambassador Zextrel pushed forward. Commander Vexler, what is the status of our invasion force? The Venurian commander's translator crackled. The invasion is discontinued, Ambassador. I strongly suggest diplomatic reconciliation. Discontinued? On whose authority? You were sent to subjugate that planet. Captain Flynn's expression shifted to what the xenobiological database later identified as a dangerous smile. Yeah, about that, said the human. We need to talk about your definition of subjugate. See, we have a different word for it. We call it messing with the wrong planet. But we're reasonable folks, Flynn said casually. We're willing to discuss terms. Terms? Zextrel hissed, his voice rising again. Sure, said Flynn casually. We've drafted up a little something we're calling the Earth Protection and Technological Exchange Treaty. Basic points are: 1. You acknowledge Earth's sovereignty. 2. You share some of that fancy TTL tech you're all zooming around with. And 3. You introduce us to the neighborhood properly. The first speaker's matrix pulsed thoughtfully. And if these terms are not met? Flynn scraped a uniquely human gesture of calculated casualness. Well, Commander Vexler has been telling us all about the Venurian homeworld. Sounds like a lovely place. We were thinking of dropping by for a visit. The implied threat hung in the air like a suspended blade. You don't have the capability, protested Zextrel, but his translator conveyed a distinct lack of conviction. Flynn pointedly looked around at the repurposed Venurian vessels, now in Earth orbit. We didn't have this capability 3 days ago, either. Amazing what humans can do with a little motivation and some new toys. The first speaker's matrix shifted through several colors before settling on a diplomatic gold. Captain Flynn, the Galactic Council acknowledges Earth's response as justified self-defense under Statute 4221C. While we cannot officially authorize technological exchange with pre-TTL civilizations, we are open to discussing observer status for Earth representatives. Flynn nodded. That's a start. We've prepared a delegation. With your permission, we'll dispatch them to your coordinates immediately. Immediately? The first speaker's matrix flickered in surprise. You have faster than light capability already? We've got something workable, Flynn said vaguely. Turns out the principles weren't that complicated once we had working examples. Our engineers are calling it the, well, obviously, that's how it works drive. Before the council could respond, alarms sounded throughout the chamber. Unidentifiable vessel approaching Galactic Council headquarters, announced the chamber's AI. Configuration unknown. Technology signature appears to be hybrid Venurian human design. On the holographic display, Captain Flynn spread his hands in a gesture of feigned innocence. Oh, would you look at that? They must have been in the neighborhood. Don't worry, they're just eager to meet everyone. We've been alone in the universe for so long, you know. Can't wait to make new friends. The emphasis he placed on the word friends sent a collective shudder through the assembled delegates. The first speaker's matrix stabilized. We will welcome your delegation, Captain Flynn, and we assure you that the unfortunate incident with the Venurian hegemony will be addressed appropriately. Great. Flynn's tone brightened. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Flynn out. The communication ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence once more. What? Asked Zextrel weakly. Have I done? Ambassador Lyria's mercury eyes reflected the ambient light. You've introduced humanity to the galactic stage centuries before they were to arrive. May the cosmic harmony help us all. Humanity's integration 6 standard months later, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. For one thing, it was more crowded. The addition of a human delegation had necessitated physical alterations to accommodate their unique environmental needs and peculiar customs, such as the concept of coffee breaks and bathroom facilities. For another, the traditional seating arrangement, organized by species age in the galactic community, had been amplified by the humans insisting on a more egalitarian layout. Ambassador Zextrel, significantly diminished in status, but permitted to retain his position due to what the humans called keeping your enemies closer, watched as the human delegation entered the chamber for the quarterly session. Leading them was Ambassador Olivia Blackwell, a formidable human female with dark skin and startlingly keen eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Behind her walked her advisors, a military attaché, a scientific consultant, and most disturbing of all, a cultural exchange officer whose job seemed to mainly involve introducing alien species to human entertainment media. Thanks to that individual's efforts, phrases like, "I'll be back," and "May the Force be with you," had inexplicably become common greetings in council proceedings, despite no one being entirely sure what they referenced. The council recognizes Earth's delegation, announced the first speaker, whose matrix now occasionally displayed a subtle blue-green pattern reminiscent of humanity's homeworld, a diplomatic courtesy that had not gone unnoticed. "Thank you, first speaker," said Ambassador Blackwell, taking her place at the newly installed Earth station in the chamber. "Before we begin today's agenda, I'd like to address the incident at the Proxima Centauri outpost." A collective tension spread through the chamber. The incident, as it was diplomatically termed, had involved a Draxian mining corporation attempting to establish operations in what Earth now claimed as its local neighborhood without proper consultation. The Draxians had discovered, much like the Venurans before them, that humans took territorial incursions personally. The Earth Unified Defense Force wishes to extend its regrets for the misunderstanding, continued Blackwell, though her tone suggested a distinct lack of actual regret. The Draxian ships were given every opportunity to identify themselves and state their intentions. They were fired upon without provocation, protested the Draxian representative, a squat, amphibious being whose skin was currently flushed in angry orange. Ambassador Blackwell raised an eyebrow, a subtle human expression that everyone in the chamber had quickly learned to recognize as dangerous. Without provocation, they disabled our automated greeting buoy and proceeded to deploy mining equipment in a star system we had clearly marked as under Earth protection. When hailed, they responded with what our linguistics team has translated as, and I quote, "Mind your own business, primitive dirt walkers." She paused, allowing the translator to catch up and the implications to sink in. "As I understand galactic law," she continued smoothly, "preemptive self-defense is permitted when territorial sovereignty is threatened." Our response was measured and appropriate. All Draxian personnel were safely returned to Draxian space. She didn't mention that the Draxian ships had been confiscated and were probably already being taken apart by eager human engineers to see what new technological wonders they might contain. The first speaker's matrix pulsed in what the chamber had come to recognize as the equivalent of a resignation sigh. The incident will be noted in the record as a territorial misunderstanding. Moving on to the next item. The human proposal for the updated galactic transit protocols. A subtle wave of unease passed through the chamber. The proposal, more accurately described as a comprehensive overhaul of transportation regulations that had stood unchanged for millennia, was just the latest example of humanity's baffling approach to galactic integration. Rather than deferring to established conventions, they questioned everything, suggested improvements and refinements with an enthusiasm that many species found exhausting. "Thank you, first speaker," said Ambassador Blackwell. "As detailed in our submission, we believe the current protocols are unnecessarily restrictive and inefficient. Our analysis indicates that implementing our suggested changes would reduce transit times by an average of 37% while improving safety margins by 22%. These protocols have served the galactic community for over 6,000 years. Objective: Counselor Grids. They are proven and reliable." Ambassador Blackwell smiled. Another expression the council had learned could mean many things, none of them necessarily good. "With all due respect, Counselor, we've always done it this way," isn't a compelling argument against improvement. Our engineers have tested these modifications extensively, and the data speaks for itself. She activated a holographic display, showing simulation results that even the most skeptical delegates had to admit were impressive. From his diminished position, Zextrel watched the proceedings with a mixture of resentment and reluctant admiration. In just 6 months, humans had gone from an isolated pre-TTL civilization to an increasingly influential voice in galactic affairs. They called it catching up quickly. The rest of the galaxy was starting to call it the human problem. Humanity's legasolated. During what the humans had instituted as a refreshment interval, Zextrel found himself visited by Ambassador Blackwell herself. Ambassador Zextrel, she greeted him with well-practiced pronunciation that his translator nevertheless felt compelled to correct. "I've been hoping for a chance to speak with you privately." Zextrel's appendages fluttered nervously. Ambassador Blackwell, what can I do for Earth's representative? Her smile was diplomatic, but carried an edge. I wanted to personally thank you. Thank me? His translator couldn't quite mask his confusion. Of course. If your hegemony hadn't decided to invade Earth, we might still be happily oblivious to the wider galactic community, focusing on our petty internal disputes rather than our rightful place among the stars. She sipped from a container of the stimulant beverage humans called coffee, a substance that several council biologists had classified as a mild neurotoxin but which humans consumed in vast quantities. Your invasion was the best thing that ever happened to our species, she continued conversationally. It unified us in ways nothing else could have. North, south, east, west. Old divisions disappeared overnight when your ships appeared in our skies. So really, you did us an enormous favor. Zextrel's breathing apparatus worked overtime as he processed the casual audacity of her statement. You're welcome, Ambassador. Blackwell's laugh was musical, but somehow deeply unsettling. In fact, there's a growing movement back on Earth to erect a monument to you, the alien who united humanity. Quite the legacy, don't you think? Before Zextrel could formulate a response, they were interrupted by the human delegation's cultural exchange officer, who approached with barely contained excitement. Ambassador, the Ethethrans have agreed to a movie night. I'm thinking we start with Independence Day, and then move on to the day the Earth stood still for contrast and cultural context. You know, Ambassador Blackwell nodded thoughtfully. Excellent choices. Though perhaps at arrival to show, we understand the importance of communication. The cultural officer brightened. Perfect. I'll set it up for next cycle. As the officer hurried away, Ambassador Blackwell turned back to Zextrel. You should join us, Ambassador. I think you'd find our fictional depictions of first contact illuminating. With that, she departed, leaving Zextrel to wonder, not for the first time, if humanity's seemingly haphazard approach to galactic diplomacy was as unplanned as it appeared. Redefining the galactic Futurone standard year after the failed Venurian invasion, a special session of the Galactic Council was convened. The agenda contained a single item: the formal ratification of the Earth Protection and Technological Exchange Treaty, now expanded into a comprehensive document that outlined humanity's integration into the galactic community. The chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 73 council species were present, along with observers from non-council races, and most notably, an expanded Earth delegation that now included specialists in various fields of science, diplomacy, and culture. The first speaker's matrix hovered at the center of the chamber, pulsing with formal gold light. Before we proceed to the ratification vote, began the first speaker, are there any final statements from the signatory parties? Ambassador Blackwell stood. Over the past year, she had become a familiar and somewhat feared presence in the council. Today, she wore formal diplomatic attire that incorporated design elements from various alien cultures, a typically human touch that managed to be simultaneously respectful and presumptuous. The people of Earth wish to express our profound gratitude for the welcome we have received from the galactic community, she began, her voice carrying the practiced sincerity of a seasoned diplomat. What began as an uninvited intrusion into our world has blossomed into what we hope will be a lasting and mutually beneficial relationship. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably with the veiled reference to the Venurian invasion. In the span of a single Earth year, we have advanced our understanding of the universe and our place within it beyond what might have taken us centuries to achieve on our own. For this acceleration, we are thankful. She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. However, we also recognize that our enthusiastic embrace of galactic citizenship has caused some concerns among our new neighbors. An understatement of galactic proportions. In 1 year, humans had established outposts in 12 star systems, created diplomatic relationships with 35 species, initiated 17 technological exchange programs, established a thriving trade in cultural artifacts, particularly something called classic rock that several photosensitive species found inexplicably appealing, and, most alarmingly, initiated recruiting non-humans into Earth-led scientific and exploratory initiatives. We wish to assure the Council that Earth has no territorial ambitions beyond what we have already established as our protective sphere. We seek only knowledge and friendship. Ambassador Zextrel, watching from his now even more diminished position, the Venurian hegemony having suffered significant political consequences for the failed invasion, couldn't help but notice that friendship, as practiced by humans, often looks suspiciously like cultural assimilation. To demonstrate our commitment to galactic harmony, continued Ambassador Blackworth has prepared a gesture of goodwill. She nodded to a member of her delegation, who activated a holographic display. We have discovered that the extinct Mexori species, whose unfortunate encounter with Earth centuries ago has been well documented, left behind several colony worlds that have since fallen into neglect. Our archaeological teams have recovered substantial cultural and technological artifacts from these worlds. The hologram showed images of humans carefully preserving and cataloging Mexilori relics. While the Mexori themselves are tragically beyond recovering, their cultural legacy is not. Earth proposes the establishment of a Mexilori cultural preservation initiative, funded by Earth, but overseen by the Galactic Council, to ensure that their contributions to galactic civilization are not forgotten. The chamber was stunned into silence. The humans, who had effectively caused the extinction of the Mexori through self-defense, were now advocating to preserve their memory. It was either the height of hypocrisy or a gesture of profound wisdom. No one was quite sure which. The first speaker's matrix shifted through several colors before responding. Earth's proposal is noted and will be considered by the appropriate committees. Now, if there are no further statements, we shall proceed to the ratification vote. The voting process was brief and unanimous, not because all delegates necessarily supported Earth's integration, but because the alternative, leaving humans to their own devices without oversight, was universally considered more dangerous. A different philosophy as the session concluded and delegates began to disperse. Ambassador Lyria of the Ethetheran Conclave approached Ambassador Blackwell. Impressive, she admitted, mercury eyes reflecting the ambient light. You've managed to transform a cautionary tale into a monument to cross-species cooperation. Blackwell smiled. That's what humans do best. We adapt the narrative and rewrite history in the process. There was no accusation in Lyria's tone, merely curiosity. Not rewrite, Blackwell corrected. Expand. The Mexori story used to be simply, they invaded Earth and disappeared. Now it's, they encountered Earth. Conflict erupted. And from that tragedy, we've all learned something valuable. Lyria studied her for a long moment. You know, in all my centuries observing the cosmos, I've never encountered a species quite like yours. Is that a compliment or a warning? Perhaps both, said Lyria. 5 years ago, you were isolated on your world, focused on your own conflicts. Now, you're integrated into every aspect of galactic civilization, pushing change at a pace that makes many uncomfortable. Change doesn't have to be feared, said Blackwell. No, agreed Lyria, but it can be transformative. She gestured around the chamber at the humans, now scattered throughout, at the species who had once barely acknowledged each other, now engaged in animated discussion, at the holographic displays showing joint human-alien ventures across dozens of star systems. The Council stood unchanged for thousands of years before humanity arrived, Lyria continued. In 5 years, you've initiated more reforms than the previous 5 centuries combined. And is that so terrible? Asked Blackwell. Lyria's mercury eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. I didn't say terrible. I said transformative. She paused. I admit, I was wrong about your species. Oh, yes. I thought you might outgrow your chaotic tendencies. Instead, you've channeled them, and somehow convinced the rest of us to join you. In the center of the chamber, the first speaker's matrix pulsed with colors that had never been seen in the Council before. Vibrant, shifting patterns that somehow captured the essence of the celebration. Do you know what the first speaker said to me yesterday? Lyria asked. Blackwell shook her head. They said, Perhaps the true danger of humanity isn't their potential for destruction, but their capacity to make the rest of us want to be more like them. Blackwell laughed. A genuine, warm sound. Now that is a compliment or a warning, Lyria countered, but there was unmistakable warmth in her voice as well. Above them, the holographic display shifted to show Earth still blue and green and beautiful, but now surrounded by a network of stations, ships, and satellites that connected it to the wider galactic community. No longer isolated, no longer alone. You know, said Blackwell, looking up at the image of her homeworld. There's another human saying that seems appropriate. Don't invade Russia in winter. I don't understand the reference, admitted Lyria. Blackwell smiled. It means some fights aren't worth starting, because you can't possibly win them. She gestured to the image of Earth. The Venurans learned that lesson the hard way. And what lesson should the rest of the galaxy take from humanity's rise? Blackwell considered this for a moment. Perhaps simply this: underestimate us at your peril, but ally with us, and watch what we can accomplish together. As they stood watching the celebration unfold around them, neither spoke the obvious truth that hung in the air between them. The galaxy would never be the same again, and perhaps that was exactly what it needed. The end.